obscure city is a place where you can find many unique dangers. This is where she works, Cassandra Killjoy, paranormal private eye. Now a teenage girl's father has gone missing, and Killjoy believes that the city's enigmatic protector, the swordsman, is the key to finding him. So Killjoy must face many deadly dangers in her search for the swordsman. Available on Amazon.com. The Chroma Conclave arc continues, with plenty of treacherous terrors ahead, both literal and figurative demons to conquer, and villains and dragons to slay. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, and welcome to Cartoon vs. Campaign, where we compare the Legend of Vox Machina to the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that inspired it. Before we begin, the usual disclaimers apply. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen seasons 1 through 3 of the Legend of Vox Machina, or campaign 1 of Critical Role, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. While the title of these videos implies conflict, it is not my intention to prove that one version of the story is better than the other. They're both great. This is simply meant as a fun compare and contrast between the two. I will not be going over any scenes from the cartoon that don't involve Vox Machina, as we already know that those scenes don't occur in the campaign, as that version of the story is told entirely from Vox Machina's point of view. And last but not least, the main difference between the cartoon and the campaign is the order of events. So, for the sake of clarity, I will be following the order of events of the campaign and separating each chapter by villain, starting with Dr. Anna Ripley. When we last left off, our Tagan, the Traveler, sent our heroes back to Whitestone from the Fey Realm after they defeated Sandor and acquired the Fenris Bow. In both versions of the story, this is when they discover the magical barrier that has been placed around Whitestone. In the cartoon, after a clandestine meeting with Rayshawn, in which they learn about Thordak's nest and how the only way to defeat him was with the Plate of the Dawn Martyr, which is located at Ankh'arel, our heroes mount a stealth mission to Iman to confirm all of Rayshawn's claims. And only after they acquire said confirmation do they officially go to Ankh'arel to get the plate. So here are the first two big differences between the cartoon and the campaign. In the campaign, the stealth mission to Iman never happens. In fact, our heroes don't return to Iman until it's time to face Thordak. And number two, between them returning from the Fey Realm and going to Ankh'arel, so much happens. So much. When our heroes return to Whitestone, due to side effects from the plane shift, Grog and Percy have no memory of their time in the Feywild. Our heroes put a pin on that and go to meet with Cassandra and Gilmore, where they discover that Seeker Assume survived the attack of the Chroma Conclave on Iman, but still suffered some serious acid burns. Gilmore reveals that he has been trying to scry on the dragons, and that while he hasn't been able to locate Rayshawn, he has discovered that Thordak is still in Iman, and Vuragal is in Draconia, where he has taken over in the same manner that Umbrasyl took over Westren. And right on cue, at that very moment, Vuragal himself is spotted on the horizon with a small contingent of dragons headed their way. In the cartoon, Thordak's spawn actually make it into the city, causing incalculable damage. In the campaign, however, Gilmore's force field keeps the city hidden, and the dragons fly by without incident. Whew! Our heroes then go to the Temple of Pelor, where they reunite with Pike. She casts Greater Restoration on Grog and Percy and restores their memories. The party then argues about where to go next. They can either go to Ankh'arel and get the next vestige, which is Cabal's ruin, or they can go to Draconia and take advantage of the fact that Vuragal is not there, scout the location, and possibly set a trap for the dragon. Ultimately, they can't decide, so they flip a coin and go to Draconia. Keyleth tries to scry on their former friend and teammate Tiberius Stormwind in order to find a safe place for them to tree portal, but can only see his pet dragon, Lockheed, so they tree portal to his location instead. And this is when they come out of the tree sideways. In the cartoon, Keyleth wild shapes into an eagle and saves the twins and Pike, while Scanlan saves the rest of the party's butts with a butt. In the campaign, Vexalia flies herself and Scanlan to safety with her broom. Vax flies Keyleth to safety with his wings, and Grog and Percy attempt to rappel out of the portal with a rope. But after 6 seconds, the portal closes and severs the rope, causing the human and the Goliath to fall. Grog simply grabs Percy and holds him close to his body, so he will take the entirety of the impact from the fall and spare his friend from any possible damage. And yes, once again Pike doesn't come along. Vex'ahlia finds Lockheed, but there is no sign of Tiberius. They then spot some humanoids in the distance, so Scanlan casts Seeming and disguises the entire party as metallic dragonborn with tails, and they then approach the humanoids in the distance. The good news is that the humanoids that they approach are dragonborn. The bad news is that they are Ravenites, a particular race of dragonborn that were oppressed and enslaved by the race of dragonborn that Vox Machina are currently disguised as. Tensions start to mount. So eventually, Scanlan has no choice but to drop Seeming and reveal their true forms. The Ravenites don't know what to do with them, so they decide to take them to their leader, Tuma. Our heroes meet with the Ravenite leader and convince her that they are truly dragon slayers, there to free them from Viragol, and they promise to return in 2 weeks to slay the dragon. But first, they need the Ravenites to guide them to Viragol's lair, so they can inspect it while the beast is away. Tuma grants their request, and our heroes are escorted to the location. There, they find another black orb, like the one that they saw in Brinsai's lair, and many dead bodies of Dragonborn on display, including the body of their former teammate and friend, Tiberius Stormwind. Yes, Tiberius Stormwind is dead. And during one of the saddest scenes in Campaign 1, our heroes carry their friend's body down to the nearby ruins of a library, where they place it among the fallen books. Grog pours out some water because he knows Tiberius didn't like ale. Vax prays to the Raven Queen, and Keyleth just drops to her knees and weeps, while Vex'ahlia does her best to comfort her. After a moment of silence, our heroes go to take their leave, but not before Keyleth creates some trees with fruit and vegetables for the Ravenites to thank them. So, in pure melancholy, our heroes tree portal back to Whitestone. That night, Keyleth stays in Vax's room. All the while, Vex'ahlia sets Lockheed free and allows him to fly out of her bedroom window. The next morning, they unanimously decide to go to Ankh'arel to get Cabal's ruin. But first, they devise a plan to potentially lure Viragol into a trap using a powerful beast, as they learn from Tuma that Viragol likes to hunt, and they believe that the Slayer's take could provide said beast. So Percy writes a formal request and gives it to Kasha Vesh to deliver to the Slayer's take on their behalf. Keyleth then escorts Cash to the Sun Tree, so she can tree portal him to Vasselheim. While they're on their way, Cash makes his move and asks Keyleth out to get a drink. Things get really awkward, and Keyleth doesn't know how to respond to this, so she just pushes him into the portal. Now, before heading out to Ankh'arel, our heroes make it a point to ask Gilmore and Jarrett, who are both from Ankh'arel, about the city's culture and customs to avoid another cultural faux pas like what they had in Draconia. Both of them tell them basically the same thing, that the city is very strict and to avoid committing any crimes while they're there. Otherwise, they will be arrested by the Hand of Ord that answer directly to the empress of the city, Jaman Sa Ord. Our heroes then ask them if there's anything they can do for them while they're in the city. Gilmore gives a locket to Vex'ahlia, telling her that she'll know who to give it to. All the while, Jared asks for a bag of Fusaka's spice, to which Scanlan takes way too much interest in. More on that later. After our heroes resupply, and Scanlan scries on Kaylee to make sure that she's okay, does Gilmore officially teleport our heroes to Ankh'arel. See, I told you it was a lot! In the cartoon, Gilmore goes with them, and they teleport directly to the heart of the city. In the campaign, both Gilmore and Jarrett outright refuse to go with them, and they are teleported into a small closet in a small house located outside the city. Upon quick inspection, our heroes determine that this is actually Gilmore's childhood home. And upon exiting the room, they meet his parents, Soren and Opessa Gedmore. Vex'ahlia immediately gives the locket to his mom. Our heroes then proceed to regale the Gedmores with stories of Gilmore's achievements. Grog then takes his alchemy jug and uses it to fill their well with water, as they learn from Gilmore and Jarrett that in Ankh'arel water is very valuable. Eventually, our heroes take their leave, and Keyleth casts Windwalking to turn the party into mist so they can fly to the city. As they do this, they are spotted by a couple of little kids who are just amazed. As she is turning into mist, Keyleth points at them and says, "Stay in school, kids," and disappears. Vax, on the other hand, pretends like him turning into mist is actually him being disintegrated, screaming in terror and scaring the crap out of the kids, completely ruin their awe and wonder. In their mist form, they fly all the way to the outer wall of the city where they rematerialize, and Scanlan summons the door to the magnificent mansion so they can spend the night. As they are entering the mansion, they are approached by a member of the Hand of Ord, who warns them not to use any strange magic while they're within the walls of the city. Scanlan promises that they will not, but we all know that that is a bald-faced lie. The next morning, Vax tries to sneak out of Keyleth's room and back into his, but is spotted by Vex'ahlia, and things get super awkward. This also happens in the cartoon, but it is Percy who's sneaking out of Vex'ahlia's room and gets spotted by Vax, and things are equally if not more super awkward. In the campaign, as soon as the awkwardness dissipates, Vex'ahlia tells Vax the story of how she found Trinket in a camp of poachers. The story is the same in the cartoon, but in that version, Vax is present. In the campaign, he is not. A little bit later, after a hearty chicken breakfast, they head into the city. The party then splits up. Keyleth, Vex, and Percy go to see a soothsayer. Vax stays with Grog to make sure that nobody messes with him, as Goliaths are greatly discriminated against in Ankh'arel. And Scanlan goes to find the spice for Jarrett. At this point, it becomes 100% clear that Scanlan thinks that by spice, Jarrett meant drugs. As Scanlan approaches a couple of teens peddling produce and asks, "Spice? You spice? Spice it?" This, entertaining subplot does not exist in the cartoon. As in that version, the reason Scanlan splits off from the party is to go see Kaylee. But the subplot is referenced when a spice dealer approaches Scanlan and tries to sell him some product using Scanlan's exact same dialogue from the campaign. Eventually, his inquiries lead him to an alley, where he meets a half-elf who instructs him to visit the Lux Run Casino that night while wearing a red shirt, and then he will be taken care of. The party then reassembles at a hookah bar and then go to their lodgings for the night, the Depths Run. There they meet Trev Bonebreaker, the Dragonborn leader of the local mercenary group. Our heroes tell him about the state of Draconia, and how they intend to slay Vuragal as soon as they get Cabal's ruin. Trev reveals to them that one of his mercenaries, Mistress Asharu, currently has Cabal's ruin. Percy pays him 400 gold for the info, and then drafts a formal letter requesting the cloak to be delivered to Mistress Asharu, that one of Trev's associates immediately delivers. In the cartoon, they don't know about Cabal's ruin until they see Ripley wearing it. They go to Ankh'arel strictly to get the plate of the Dawn Martyr. In the campaign, however, the plate is in a completely different location. The next morning, Scanlan buys his red shirt on their way to the Cerulean Palace, where they request an audience with the Empress Jamansa Ord. After waiting for 10 minutes, they are ushered into the palace, where they have a very pleasant first meeting with Jaman. This is not the case in the cartoon, where our heroes are arrested by the Hand of Ord and brought to Jamansa Ord for judgment, and have a very unpleasant first encounter. Now, let's put a pin on this scene and come back to it in a few minutes. Like I said, in the campaign, their first meeting is very pleasant, as Jaman has been keeping up with current events and is very well aware of the Chroma Conclave's attack as well as Vox Machina's effort to stop them. Vox Machina then requests Jaman's aid in the coming conflict, which Jaman is happy to grant as long as Vox Machina prove themselves. Upon saying this, Jaman leaves the room, a giant golem drops in, and attacks Vox Machina. And of course, a brawl ensues. Scanlan punches out the window behind the golem using Bigby's hand. And Keyleth, in her Earth Elemental form, and Grog, enlarged by the Titan Stone Knuckles, push the golem towards the open window. And then, Grog Sparta kicks the golem out of the tower, all the while shouting, "This is Vox Machina!" Jaman is very impressed by their performance, so rewards them with a magical brass flute that they can use only once to summon the guardian of Ankh'arel, the brass dragon Devosa. Then it is revealed that Jaman is Devosa in disguise. The Empress shares this secret with them as a show of trust. Then presents our heroes with a brass and sapphire emblem that they can use as proof of their alliance with Jamansa Ord. After that exciting and productive sequence, our heroes go to the Lux Run Casino so Scanlan can buy some spice. After entering the casino, Scanlan is ushered to a private room where a half-orc sells him 2 large bags of fusaka for 400 gold. The orc then asks what he can call Scanlan if they were to do business again, to which Scanlan responds, "They call me the Meat Man." In the cartoon, only Gilmore seems to be aware of this particular nickname. After some light shenanigans that conclude with both Grog and Keyleth getting thrown out of the casino, our heroes return to the Death's Respite, where they argue about whether or not what Scanlan bought are actually drugs. Vex eventually gets fed up, goes downstairs, and asks Trev, who confirms that what Scanlan bought is actually just meat seasoning. Yeah, the Scan Man got scammed. The next day they meet with Headmaster James Creon to have their magical items inspected, but all they learn is that the guy is a big fat jerk. After that, they go to Mistress Asharu's home to see why she hasn't responded to Percy's letter. When they get there, Scanlan polymorphs into a dragonfly and goes inside, but it's too dark, so all he can see is that there is an open trapdoor on the floor, and that next to the front door is Percy's letter still unopened. Scanlan then flies back outside, drops polymorph, and tells the others what he saw. So Vax picks the lock and they go inside. He then goes down the trapdoor into the room under the house, where he discovers the dead body of Mistress Asharu. In the cartoon, this transpires at the archives, and they actually find Mistress Asharu still alive, until she is killed by the intruder, who is still there, Anna Ripley, who makes a run for it with the vestiges in tow. Vox Machina chase after her, but only Percy manages to corner her, when he is suddenly ambushed by Orthax, who has bonded with Ripley, and the two go on to kidnap him. And all the while Vox Machina make efforts to rescue Percy is when they are arrested by the Hand of Ord for the theft of the vestiges and murder of Mistress Asharu, and they are brought in for judgment. Again, we will come back to this in a few minutes. In the campaign, Ripley is long gone. The reason that they know that it was her is because Percy identifies the wounds on Asharu's body as gunshots. They know that she took the vestige because they can tell that it was ripped from Asharu's body. And they know that she has a massive head start because by the decomposition of Asharu's body, they can tell that she's been dead for a week. Keyleth then uses her magic to check Percy and discovers that Ripley put an enchantment on his gun and has been listening in on them the whole time. And that is how Ripley knows about the vestiges and where to find them. Our heroes then willingly go to the Death's Respite to tell Trev everything that happened, in hopes that their transparency will absolve them of any culpability. So now, let's officially talk about the judgment scene. Like I said, in the cartoon they are arrested and forcefully brought in for judgment. So yes, in this version, for the sake of brevity, Jamon and Trev are folded into one character. Anyway, the evidence against them is staggering, so Jamon intends to execute them all, until Percy confesses to the crime to spare the others. Jamon goes to execute him by turning him into one of her golems, when suddenly, Scanlan returns from seeing Kaylee in the nick of time, and uses his mad skills as an ace attorney to clear Percy of all charges via the use of Mythcarver, which shows Jamon the truth. In the campaign, Trev simply sends one of his associates to Asharu's house to confirm Vox Machina's story. When he returns, he confirms that indeed, Asharu has been dead for a week, so there is no way that Vox Machina could have killed her. So Trev lets them go, with the condition that when they kill Ripley, they bring him back her prosthetic arm. Percy then asks if Trev has a mage in his employ that could take the enchantment off of his gun. Trev says yes, but they'll have to wait a few minutes for the guy to be summoned and for him to come to the Death's Respite. In the meantime, Keyleth scries on Ripley and sees that she's on a ship on the ocean, so they deduce that she is on her way to get the next vestige, the dagger known as Whisper. While they're waiting for the mage, Scanlan and Grog go to the skyport to charter a skyship so they can chase after Ripley. When they get there, the clerk summons the next available captain, who turns out to be Damon, the same one that flew Vox Machina to Vasselheim during the trial of the Take. Before discussing payment, Scanlan takes out the emblem of Jamon Sa'ord and shows it to the clerk. The clerk is very impressed to see it and informs them that the palace will be paying for the whole trip. Damon is equally as impressed and lets them know that he can be ready to ship out in 1 hour. Yes, it pays to have friends in high places. On their way back, Scanlan returns to the private room in the Lux Run casino, disguised as Heisenberg from Breaking Bad. I am not kidding. In order to get revenge on the orc who swindled him. The orc is obviously not there, so Scanlan takes a dump on the table and then writes "The Meat Man Cometh" on the wall with poop. Yeah. Upon returning to the Death's Respite, they find Trev's mage, who everyone agrees looks like that wonderful picture of Matt on the carousel, taking the enchantment off of Percy's gun. So Scanlan and Grog give the others the good news about the skyship. Our heroes leave, resupply, board the ship, and take off, and only after they are in the air do they reveal to Damon their destination, the Isle of Glintshore. In the cartoon, the chase is motivated by Ripley telling Thordak the location of Whitestone, which leads to the city being attacked by his spawn. Percy then finds evidence of Ripley's location. Wanting revenge, Vox Machina head over there, but in this version, they fly themselves. In the campaign, Keyleth scries on Ripley again, and sees her and her men diving into the ocean in the very spot where Whisper is located. So they will have the next vestige in their possession very soon. So now they're really gonna have to speed up if they're going to catch her, and there is a storm on the horizon. Keyleth simply parts the storm for 5 miles using control weather, and then creates a gust of wind behind the ship, making it go faster, therefore arriving at Glintshore ahead of schedule, where they spot Ripley's ship anchored at the coast of the island. Upon witnessing this, Vex'ahlia turns to Vax and says, "Your girlfriend is way cooler than you." In the cartoon, Vex and Vax make it onto Ripley's ship, and an epic brawl ensues between them, Ripley, and her men. In the campaign, none of the members of Vox Machina board the ship. Technically. Percy takes a sniper position with bad news on the deck of the ship and covers his friends. Scanlan polymorphs Grog into a giant eagle, and they fly to the shore together. Vax flies Keyleth over Ripley's ship and drops her. Keyleth then transforms into an earth elemental and casts Fire Hands, turning herself into a meteor and plowing right through the hull of Ripley's ship, effectively sinking it. Vex'ahlia then flies Percy to the shore with her broom, where the party reassembles. In the cartoon, they meet no physical opposition when they get there, but Ripley did leave a ton of booby traps in her wake. Vax disarms most of them, but Vex'ahlia accidentally trips one that releases delirium gas, trapping our heroes in nightmarish delusions. While distracted, Ripley's men kidnap Percy. Again. In the campaign, they are attacked by a few air elementals the moment that they land on the shore. But after defeating them, they meet no further obstacles until they find Ripley talking to 2 of her men, a female Goliath and a young male human, in a clearing in the jungle. The battle that ensues is way different in both versions of the story. In the cartoon, Percy fights Ripley and her men alone, while the rest of our heroes suffer the effects of the delirium gas. He seemingly defeats her, only for her to shoot him dead with a derringer that she had hidden under her sleeve, and then gets away. Then, much later, Vex and Vax catch up to her and her men on her ship and continue the battle. In the campaign, the entire encounter with Ripley happens on Glintshore. Our heroes seemingly appear to have a jump on her, only for her to officially reveal to them that she has bonded with Orthax, which of course shocks the hell out of the cast. And after blowing their minds, she literally blows up the battlefield by setting off explosives that create 2 giant craters on the terrain, and then reveals that she has about a dozen gun-wielding henchmen posted in the surrounding jungle. Scanlan takes care of the gunners by casting reverse gravity, sending them up into the air. Grog then kicks the female Goliath into one of the craters. The young male human attacks Keyleth with Whisper. Vax recognizes the young human as Kanan, the young Vox Machina fan who he met back in Iman during the Briarwood arc. Upon seeing Keyleth go unconscious from his attack, Kanan drops Whisper and begs for forgiveness. But don't worry about Kiki, she's brought back up to consciousness and she rejoins the fray right away. The rest of the party has a very difficult time attacking Ripley, as she keeps using Cabal's Ruin to disappear and reappear. Orthax attacks them directly and possesses them, forcing them to fight each other. Kanan even joins Vox Machina's efforts to fight him, but their efforts are too little too late, as the demon knocks Percy unconscious. Ripley seizes the opportunity and shoots Percy dead, disappearing once again as Percy's name disappears from her gun. Vex screams in horror and goes to Percy's body, while the rest of the party focus their attacks on Orthax. They manage to knock down the demon, and Scanlan holds his action to cast Force Field the moment Ripley reappears. Almost on cue, she does, and Scanlan traps her in a force field from which she cannot escape. And this, my friends, is when shit gets real. Vox Machina gathers around the force field and get ready to attack with extreme prejudice the moment that Scanlan drops it. The Gnome Bard says, "Vox Machina is not killing you. Percy is killing you." Drops the shield, and they all attack. Vax sinks all 3 daggers into her body, with the 3rd one knocking off her prosthetic arm. Scanlan cuts the Rolo crest into her forehead with Mythcarver. Grog slashes her across the middle with such force that he nearly cuts her in half. Keyleth chokes her with Grasping Vine. And in both versions, Vex delivers the finishing blow by sinking an arrow into her chest and one into her mouth. But in the cartoon, she gets a cool action hero line, where Ripley pleads that she was just trying to make the world a better place, and Vex'ahlia responds, the world would be a better place with Percy in it. In that version, during the battle, Vax heard Percy's voice coming from Ripley's gun, and determines that his soul is trapped inside. He then pleads with the Matron of Ravens to revive Percy, to which she assures him that there is a way, but there will be a price. He then proposes reviving Percy to the others, which leads to them performing a resurrection ritual while he travels into Orthax's realm to retrieve Percy's soul. In the campaign, they immediately decide to take Percy's body back to Whitestone, where Pike can bring him back to life in the morning when they regain their powers. In the meantime, they collect the vestiges and anything of value from the battlefield. Grog, as per Percy's instructions before the battle, collects all the guns and puts them in the bag of holding. Vex'ahlia flies back to the airship and tells Damon what happened, and instructs him to take off and meet them in Whitestone. She then returns to the magnificent mansion where the heroes reassemble and rest for the night. The next morning, as planned, they tree portal back to Whitestone and rush Percy's body to the partially built temple of Sarenrae, where Pike meets them and immediately jumps into action, only to find that something is blocking her, and it's coming from Ripley's gun. Keyleth quickly casts Greater Restoration and severs Orthax's hold on Percy's soul, and the ritual continues. Keyleth further contributes to the ritual by taking the raven skull that she once gave to Percy and holding it close to her heart, and making an entire flock of ravens appear around her. Vax unfurls his black wings to add to the effect. In the cartoon, Vax's astral form travels into Orthax's realm and literally looks for Percy's soul, but when he finds it, the gunslinger doesn't seem to have any memory of him. In both versions, the ritual fully succeeds thanks to Vex talking to Percy directly and confessing her love for him. Her dialogue and actions are a bit different in both versions, but the one line that remains exactly the same is when she reveals that her heart belongs to him. This gives the ritual the final push it needs to succeed, and in both versions, Percy comes back to life. Now that Percy's back to life, our heroes distribute the vestiges that they collected. Whisper goes to Vax, and Cabal's Ruin goes to Percy. They then take the gunslinger back to the castle so he can rest. There, they run into Gilmore and Jarrett, who they invite to a drink. Percy collapses on his bed. The rest of the party, along with Gilmore and Jarrett, go to a tavern. There, Scanlan gives the bag of Fusaka to Jarrett and outright asks him to buy him drugs. Reluctantly, Jarrett agrees to buy him some Soothe. Kids, don't do Soothe. Vax'ildan then asks Jarrett to give Kanan a job within the Whitestone army, to which Jarrett happily agrees, and they take their leave. Vex'ahlia then reveals to the others that she found a letter from Percy that was meant to be read in the case of his death. Vax snatches the letter from her and goes on to read it. The others sit there in awe as they listen to Percy's captivating words. As soon as he's done, he puts the letter away and they all retire back to the castle, where Vex'ahlia quietly sneaks the letter back into Percy's coat before going to bed herself. The next morning, during breakfast, they are summoned to a meeting with Seeker Assume in the war room. Our heroes go, and this is when one of their allies turns out to be Rayshawn in disguise. In the cartoon, it's Keeper Yenin. In the campaign, it's Seeker Assume. The cast has another amazing reaction as Rayshawn reveals that she wants to help them destroy the Cinder King. And just like in Season 2, this, my friends, is where I'm gonna hit the big to be continued. So in the next cartoon versus campaign, our heroes will take on the Frigid Doom. In the meantime, don't fret, because it's almost Thursday.